Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, and we're mixing things up this week, taking a week into a deep dive, I guess you can say, into the world of horror and sci-fi. We did sci-fi week 1, and now we're getting involved in sci-fi week 2. A very special guest to kick it all off, a man of many horror films and television series, of course, and you've seen some of the most frightening characters come to life, such as Butterball. Let's take you to Mr. Simon Bamford. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Joseph, thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure. I love sci-fi. I wish I could do more sci-fi. I've done a lot of horror, but not too much sci-fi, but some. It's my favorite genre.
You're absolutely one of the greats in horror, and always enjoyed your work, and would like to kind of go to the very beginning, growing up as a child or young actor. What are some of your first memories of film?
Oh, first memories of film. Probably being from the UK, things like it's not very horror or sci-fi or WWE, but it's The Sound of Music. Kind of sitting around with the family on Christmas Day, everybody used to sit and watch The Sound of Music over and over again. The Great Escape, of course. I was born in the early '60s, so all those kind of late '60s, '70s films were kind of my big memories. My first horror film that really kind of made an impact. I really wanted to go and see The Exorcist. I was too young, but there was such a hype around The Exorcist at the time. And it took me years to actually get into it. But one of my favorite ones that I did get into eventually was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is still the original, my favorite horror film
Oh,
of
okay.
all time.
And were you a
And
fan of the remakes? Did you check those out as well?
I haven't seen the remakes. No, I
Okay.
think when you see the original, I just want to keep those kind of in my head. I'm sure they're very good.
They are good,
But
but you're right. I mean, there's
I
nothing
met.
like the original.
I was lucky enough to meet Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface. Sadly, no longer with us. But I have huge respect. He was an absolute gentleman, a huge Goliath of a Icelandic gentleman, but very gentle. So not at all what you'd expect. Actually, since then, I did a podcast just about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was interesting doing the research on it and finding out all about that movie and some of the things they went through. The guy playing grandfather, he said
Yes.
he would only go through the makeup once. So that meant the dinner scene they did. I think something ridiculous, like 27 hours they filmed for, and
Oh,
the
wow.
frustration and the anger and the feeling of that film is because the cast had been like filming it and working on it for like all through the night. They were all absolutely exhausted, and I think it kind of shows when you know that and you watch that scene. You go, okay, I get what's happening now on this shoot, on this scene especially.
Wow, that's a great story. I had never heard that before, and it explains the realism to that scene, especially.
Yeah, another story from it was the most people believe that it was inspired by a true story, but when I kind of did a bit more of a deep dive on it, I found that Tobe Hooper, he he actually got the idea for the story. He went out at Christmas back before the days of the internet, and he went to do his Christmas shopping at the local mall. And those people too young to remember before the internet, Christmas shopping used to be hell on earth, and the malls were absolutely packed with people, and everybody was frustrated and desperately. No good well-to-all men was going on then. And he was in the middle of this mall that was packed full of angry people, and he saw a store selling chainsaws. And it just hit him that he would love to buy a chainsaw and just kind of hack his way out of out of this mall and get home. And it stuck with him. And when he got home, he immediately wrote the whole film of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right down to the spoiler, but the double ending when she escapes twice.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
that's when the idea came to him. Yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned Sound of Music, of course, Julie Andrews, and like you said, that's one of those films where the entire family would, wait for it to come on and sit around and watch it together. And that's how it was
Yeah.
back then. You would have to wait for a film to come on. Sometimes, like Wizard of Oz or whatever it may be, it would be once a year sometimes. And if you didn't catch
Yeah.
it when it came on, that was a whole other year or half a year that you'd have to wait.
It seems crazy now to think back to those days, but we used to moan endlessly about endless repeats on TV. But in the UK, when I was growing up, we had two channels. There was BBC One and ITV, and that was it. And whatever they decided to show at Christmas, that was what we watched. There was no streaming, and it's bizarre how things have changed so quickly within the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were slaves to, and now, of course, it seems crazy that we would complain that there were no repeats to watch, because now you just can't get through everything that you want to watch because there's just too much to watch, which is a great place to be.
So you're a fan of horror, at what point, why don't you tell us a story about how you broke into the industry yourself?
So I went to drama school in North London, a place called Mount View Theatre School in Crouch End, and while I was there, I was doing a production of King Lear, and unbeknownst to me, just around the corner from the drama school, some Liverpudlian people had just moved down from Liverpool to London, and they'd started up their own fringe theatre company. And in this theatre company was the writer, and one of the actors was Clive Barker. Another of the actors was Doug Bradley. Another of the actors was Oliver Parker. And they came to see me in King Lear, and they liked what I was doing, and they asked me to join their fringe theatre company when I graduated, which is what I did. And we kind of went to the Edinburgh Festival, and we did these kind of tiny little venues and played to kind of 6 people. And then because it was fringe, you're not making a living for it, and that's what we'd all trained for. So after a couple of years of this, we disbanded and we went on our separate ways. And then I just rang Clive a year and a half after that. I knew then that Clive was incredibly talented, and his brain is just so impressive and so creative. Um, I just rang him out of the blue to see what he was up to, and he said, "Oh, I've just had these books published, the Books of Blood, and I've done a couple of screenplays for a couple of films, but I wasn't very happy with the way they turned out. So I managed to persuade he'd managed to persuade the producers to let him write and direct the next one. And he said to me then over the phone, "Do you want to play a monster in my movie?" And because I'd only kind of worked with him in fringe theatre, I was expecting it to be kind of, an ultra low budget, tiny little thing done on a kind of Cine 8 camera.
Sure.
And I said, "Yeah, yeah, that would be cool." And he said, "Okay, well, there's a special effects company in London and at Pinewood. You'll need to go and see them and have a face mask done, and then they'll show you kind of the creatures that they're developing." And so yeah, and that's what I did, and that was Hellraiser. So I was just luckily in the right place at the right time and meeting the right people.
Wow.
And of course, Doug was went on to be Pinhead. Oliver Parker, he was the removal man in the first two Hellraisers, and he was Kinski in the I think Kinski in How Nightbreed, and has gone on to have a great career for himself as a film director as well. So
And let's talk about
yeah,
that.
and that kind of
1987, you were the Cenobite. You were one of the Cenobites, Butterball, of course, which was, as a child watching that, but still a fan. It was pretty terrifying, to see those characters come to life, and a memory that will always stick with me. But what was it like playing that character? And when it came to the costume or the makeup and actually getting that on, and what did that all entail?
so I went and did the screen test, and they got a kind of basic version of what Butterball was going to look like, but it wasn't all painted up. And I assumed that they would be cutting eyes and stuff in it. But when we actually got to the first day of the shooting, um, they kind of put me into this head, which was 2 inches thick of foam latex. Uh, and then I was laced into, the body was made out of it was actually, my body was made out of glass fiber, because it was like a big dome. Clive had this idea. I was very skinny back then. I was only 25. That I could get my whole hand into the wound in my stomach, and his original vision was that I would be pulling out parts of my entrails and stuff, and
Wow.
maybe eating them, or just kind of just playing with them and then pushing them back in again. But anyway, he decided in the end that was too much. But they needed the ability to do that if they wanted. So I had a kind of fiberglass dome over my shoulders, and then there was this leather costume, kind of sewn into that. And then, strangely enough, me and Pinhead and the female Cenobite, we all had we had sequined skirts, which you
Oh
never
wow.
really see in the film. Yeah, I know. They just kind of catch the light a little bit, but you never kind of really see what they are. But I remember sitting on that very first day with Doug in the makeup room, and we were both trying to work out how the makeups would work and what we could do. And so they pulled the head over my head, which was kind of made to fit me on the inside, and then they kind of glue it all down on top. And it was then that I realized that there were no eye holes in this makeup, and there were no ear holes, and there were no nose holes. So once I was in there and glued in, I was completely blind, and I could just about hear. I couldn't breathe through my nose, so I had to breathe through my mouth. And then they put false dentures on top of my own teeth and glued those down, so I couldn't close my mouth. So my mouth was constantly filling up with saliva.
Wow.
So the noise in the makeup room throughout both films was me and Nick, who plays Chatter. We were both in the same position, just sucking the saliva out the back of our mouths, because our mouths were open, so they were filling up with saliva. And if we didn't do that, we'd kind of drown in our own saliva, because it was the only way we could breathe. But I remember sitting with Doug and saying to him, "Okay, can you let me? Because I can't see. You know, when normally when you have a makeup, you could look in the mirror and work out how the face is going to move and what expressions you can get out of it. But because I was completely blind, I couldn't do any of that.
Wow.
And so I was moving tiny little expressions, like I kind of learned at drama school to do kind of under express for film. And Doug said, "Okay, when you're ready, you go ahead and start moving your male face." And I said, "Well, I've been doing that." So I made the expressions inside the mask bigger. And again, he said, "Yeah, nothing coming out yet, guys." So by the end of it, I was doing these huge expressions inside the makeup, and he said, "Nope, nope, nothing." So I realized then that Butterball's face was never going to move, because it was impossible. It was so thick in latex, that it was just, I could not make it move.
Hmm.
So all I could really do was, I could get my tongue out. So I did a lot of kind of, you'll notice he licks his lips a little bit, because that's all I could do. And then I did have dialogue in the original script, but when we got to the day when I had to start saying my dialogue, I realized that Clive had written me lots of lines with P's and B's in them. And if you can't put your own lips together, you can't say P and you can't say B. So perhaps we'd prefer you, was one of my lines. And I said, ha ha, you. And they were like, "Cut, cut! What's going on? What's going on?" I said, I can't say the lines because I can't put my lips together." So, and it was still got pretty small budget. There was no budget there for going into a studio afterwards and redubbing anything. So they all went. Evidently, they went away in a huddle. I didn't know. I couldn't see any of it. And then eventually they came back and they said, "Okay, we can't. We're going to have to take all your dialogue and we're going to give it all to the female Cenobite." So so that day I lost all my dialogue, and that was why Butterball never spoke. He was always supposed to
Oh,
speak, but I was gutted, like
oh
really
my
gutted.
God. Yeah, that's got to be disappointing.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, and I
So
kind of because I couldn't move the face, and now I can't speak, and all I can do is move my lips, my tongue. And I had this whole kind of idea of the character. He was going to be this real kind of pervy, salacious character that was kind of lusting after Ashley Lawrence's character Kirsty, and kind of being, quite over the top sexual with her. Uh, and of course, it all just went because there's nothing else I could do really. So,
hmm,
thankfully, one of Doug's notes that he was getting constantly from Clive was to do less, do less, do less, because the makeups were so extraordinary for the 4 centibyte, 5 centibytes. Um, Clive realised at an early stage that once you got these heads on a cinema screen, kind of 30 feet wide, the less they did, the more powerful they were. The more they did, the more it weakened them.
okay.
So so it kind of worked for us that we didn't really do anything, but it didn't really matter because that's kind of what worked on screen. So,
I have
but
noticed that, by doing these interviews, a lot of the iconic costumes or, costumes that would go on to be iconic, all these characters, they looked amazing, but for the actors themselves, they were just so difficult. And it's almost like they
yeah,
they spent all their time making them look amazing, but they didn't take into account that people are going to be wearing these
the-
outfits.
yeah. I think they've got better over the days. I think back in the 80s, especially when a lot of this stuff was being created. One of the great stories, doing the convention circuit, I sat opposite the guy who played the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, yes.
His creature from the Black, and he was a swimmer. He was an Olympic swimmer, but he had to wear all this prosthetic stuff and then go underwater and swim. And I just had a great long chat with him, saying, real respect because you have so little control. I mean, I used to worry about if there was a fire or if something terrible was to happen. Being blind, you're completely reliant on other people to kind of. But no, you're absolutely right. There's a few makeups that I watch now, and whenever I see horror films and I see a creature, I'm always thinking, can that actor see? Have they managed to build in anything where he can see stuff? And they did try, evidently, building little screens in if there were no eye holes. Not on Hellraiser, but they tried building these little screens in, and then have little cameras somewhere. But evidently, it was just so confusing for the actor that it was worse rather than better. But, yeah, I agree. Um, it's all how it looks. Um, it's all in the presentation, and they're not really thinking of of the actor underneath it.
And for Hellraiser 1, was it, how long were the days of filming for you, and how long was the whole production as far as, the just filming everything?
So the whole movie took 3 months to film, but we weren't. I mean, the Cenobites are only in a very small part of the film, actually. But so we were going for a day. We would shoot for the day. The day was always really long because they would get us into makeup well before everybody else. So normally the car would come and pick me up about 3 in the morning and get to the studio around 5 in the morning, be in the makeup chair till 8. There was always a lovely time around 7:30 when the rest of the crew were arriving and the other actors were arriving, and you'd start to get this smell of bacon and eggs cooking and the canteen was getting going and stuff. And I remember the first day on set, we said, "Oh, finally, are we going to get some breakfast?" And again, because it was kind of early 80 or middle 80s, the makeup crew said, "Yeah, we're going to get some breakfast, but we're worried that if you guys eat greasy food, it's going to release the glue that's sticking the makeups down. So I'm afraid there's no breakfast for you guys."
Oh, man.
So we had coffee and OJ's, and we all used to smoke back in the day. There's a lovely picture of Pinhead sitting there with a great big long cigarette holder with a cigarette in it, looking very pretentious. But the reason was the makeups were highly flammable.
Oh,
So they gave us these long things just in case it was like catch hold of the makeup.
well, that's
So
great.
yeah.
Wow. And then the second one would come around, of course, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, 1988. what was the difference between the two as far as your costume personally? Was it the same costume? Did they upgrade it?
They, as far as the costume, I believe was exactly the same as the first one. The head was, I think they made new heads. I think, yeah, each we only had a head for each day's shoot, as far as I know, because once they took them off, they kind of got ruined. I might be wrong there. They might have been able to reuse them. Um, the one thing that was different on Hellraiser 2, I said to them, does he remove his sunglasses? Because one of the reasons I was blind was because there was one shot where he takes his sunglasses off and his eyes underneath are sewn up, which is why they didn't put eye holes in the makeup. So on the second movie, I said, is he going to kind of take his sunglasses off? And they said, no, no, he keeps his sunglasses on for the whole film. I said, okay, can I cut out some little holes? Now, each of these makeups were like £10,000 each, so they were so expensive. So the idea of me kind of making holes in it was not great. But I said, at least I'd be able to see.
Yeah.
And they came back and they said, yeah, okay. So I cut out these tiny little holes. Um, so on the second film, the glasses are slightly different because they were different glasses, and then they put these special things in the side. So if the camera was filming here, you wouldn't see that there were holes in the makeup. You would have never seen anyway, but they were just covering themselves. So the sunglasses were slightly different. And actually, it made it worse rather than better because people then assumed that I could see, but actually, all I could see was like literally this tiny little hole straight ahead. And again, Doug, who had dark contact lenses in, he said he was pretty blind as well because he said the sets were always very dark, and before each shot they would completely fill them up with smoke. And he said, and then he had kind of black contact lenses in, so he said pretty much he was blind as well. So,
Wow.
so yeah, they were. Apart from the female, we were all pretty much blind.
And did you have a better experience between the two? If you had to pick one, was part one better for you? Part two?
I, I think. I think part one because it was with Clive,
Mm.
and it was friends working together, and we had a shorthand, and Doug was there, and it was exciting being on a big set and being on a big movie, which none of us, for most of us, it was the first time. Even Clive, it was his first movie, so it was we were learning so much on that one. It was frustrating too. Probably the first one was more frustrating. We probably do a week, a day a week. We would be in on them. I think we probably messed around more on the second one. The first one was at Cricklewood Production Village in London, which no longer exists. And the second one, because the budget went up, we were at Pinewood Studios. So that was exciting being there because there were all the James Bond movies and the James Bond stage there. It's the biggest studios in the UK, or it was. And so we messed around more. We had fun. We knew what we were doing, and the crew was pretty much the same crew, a lot of the same cast. And that also went through to when we went on to Nightbreed a couple of years later. Clive wanted to have the same crew come back, so we all kind of knew each other by then. Which was and Nightbreed was the first time I felt that I got a chance to prove to the crew that I could actually act, because up until then, there was this thing with a face that didn't move. They didn't know my
Right.
face didn't move. I could make no expression. They just saw this actor who didn't do very much, really.
Yeah.
Just kind of waddled around the set pretending to be fat. So,
And of course, they would go on to become a cult classic. Hellraiser, very popular within the horror industry. Filming at that time, did you think it was going to be as popular as it had become? Did anybody think that, or did they just think it was going to be another film?
no, this is something you hear over and over again. The kind of the lucky accident of getting all the right people and the right everything comes together just by magic. Um, Even Clive believed his big hope for Hellraiser was that it would be a small budget movie that one day somebody might see and give him another job. That was his biggest hope for it. Um, we all we didn't have very high hopes. I mean, we knew the script was really good. We knew the makeups were fantastic. Before we finished filming the first one, it was American budget, so the dailies were going over to being sent over. The rushes were being sent over to the States, and the feedback from the States was phenomenal. They Before we finished filming, they'd done rewrites, they'd increased the budget, they'd asked for the ending to be changed so that there could be a sequel. So we kind of knew by then that there was going to be a sequel.
Hmm.
Um, but even then, even when the first two had come out, um, there was no internet back then, so we didn't really know what an impact it had had around the world, and it had. So we did the second one, and then for the third one, which was I think a few years later, they moved production over to the States, so I wasn't involved in that one. And we did Nightbreed, but then it all kind of went really quiet, and it wasn't until the 10th anniversary of Hellraiser, so nearly 30 years ago, that we got invited over to Boston to Monster Model Fest convention in Boston. And Doug actually rang me up and said, "Oh, he'd done a couple of conventions, and they wondered if we'd be interested in going to do a convention over in the States." And we were like, "Yeah, yeah."
Yeah.
And since then, we've never really looked back. It's just been so popular, and I think the convention circuit has helped to kind of keep the interest going. And there just seems to be, just when we think it's all going to start fizzling out, a whole new generation seems to discover the Hellraiser franchise. I mean, it helped with the Jamie. I can't remember her name. With the Hellraiser 2022 that came out a few years ago,
Yes.
and now of course there's this new Hellraiser game that's coming out, which I think is going to be pretty amazing. Hellraiser Revelation,
Oh, okay. I
I
didn't
think it's
realize
called
that. All right.
Revelation. Yeah, it's coming out on Xbox and PlayStation. PlayStation, is
Yeah.
that right? What are the two? Yeah, they're the two big ones, aren't they?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and Steam as well.
Wow.
So yeah, I think that's this year that should be released, and the four of us are all featured in it, evidently.
Oh, so that'll open up
So
a
again,
whole
this
other opportunity.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
it's amazing.
And let's talk about that. The fan interactions, the conventions. What are some of the conventions that you've traveled to over the years? Maybe some of the places you've traveled, and you said Boston, obviously, and maybe some fan interactions that stand out or are memorable to you still to this day.
I've been really lucky because I work for a theatre company that travelled all over the world as well. So I've been to so many places. I worked in Kuala Lumpur and Karachi, the Emirates, Dubai. Um, Bucharest. Recently, I've just been filming in Budapest in Hungary. Um, but convention-wise, we did a lot. We've done a lot over, obviously, in the UK. We did a lot in France and Germany, and in the States. It's kind of been everywhere, to be honest. We've so West Coast. We did LA. We did Son of Monster Palooza over in LA. We did Boston. A couple of weeks' time, I'm coming over to do Charlotte or Concord in North Carolina, Atlantic City, Orlando. Gosh, Philadelphia. I could go on and on and on and on and on
Yeah.
for like 30 years. It's been extraordinary. It's always very humbling to see people who have tattoos from the Hellraiser franchise, or when somebody's got your tattoo on them. It's like, wow, no, that's somebody who's really invested in the work that we've done, which is, you know, amazing to see. And more recently, last year there was somebody who'd built a Hellraiser pinball machine,
Oh,
which
wow.
was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. It was so detailed, right down to kind of two-way mirror things that if you hit the right combination, it would light up behind, and there would be the hospital room with Kirsty in there, and it had all of the characters in it. It was quite extraordinary, and they they recorded our voices, and they
Mhm.
were going to add those in so that when you hit certain things, it would have Doug's voice and it would have my voice as I would have said the lines had
Yes.
my lines not been cut. There was also somebody had a Hellraiser car that they got, quite a few guitars that are really amazing, like three-dimensional figures of us coming out of the guitar, skateboards. Um, it's It's amazing. One of my regrets is that they don't have a Funko Pop of my character or the female character, which is all to do with the rights. Um, they got the rights for the um, for Hellraiser 3 onwards, so they can use Pinhead, and Chatterer did appear in a later film, so they can use him. But because the female and Butterball were only in the first two, they haven't got the rights to use our characters, so they never made us Funko Pops, which is really annoying.
Oh, wow. Do you think that's something that they'll ever pursue, try to get the rights?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think the rights are complicated. From what I understand, Clive got a lot of the rights back because they were owned by the Weinsteins. But obviously they've had a bit of a demise. So Clive managed to get most of the rights back. But there were certain rights, I think, on Hellraiser 1 and 2 that were Hollywood lawyer said, well, actually, I've got the rights to that. And Clive doesn't have the funding to fight that with a Hollywood lawyer, so he
Mm,
all he can do is really accept that if he says he has them, then he has them, which is you
sure.
know
What a shame, and hopefully, down the line, hopefully that changes, and we'll be able to see that happen for you guys, because that would be, obviously the pops, those are a phenomenon. Be a great combination,
yeah,
I think, for you guys.
yeah. No, it's been it's and the cosplay that we see around the world is absolutely amazing. Some of it's beautiful, some of it. We've seen kid Cenobites, like kid pinheads.
Oh, wow.
There's a few beautiful women who dress up as a kind of female pinheads, and they are absolutely stunning. Um, yeah,
And let's talk
and
about,
a few seen a few. Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go right ahead.
No, no, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, let's talk about Nightbreed. Clive Barker's Nightbreed came out 2 years later, 1990. You said a lot of the
Mhm.
same crew were used for that project as well. Just kind of tell us about your experience on that film.
So Nightbreed was very exciting. The It was based on Clive's short story Cabal, which was an amazing book about persecution, I suppose, about minorities being persecuted. I suppose in some ways it was kind of a little bit based on kind of the persecution of the Jews, but kind of given a twist of fantasy. So it's based in this amazing fantasy world under Midian. It was filmed on many stages at Pinewood Studios, and it had the most incredible sets. It had a very big budget for 1990, and there was a real buzz around it. People were saying it was going to be the Star Wars film that represented fantasy. So there was real expectation that this was going to be an enormously successful movie. Um, and one of the excitements for me was that as we were filming it on the lot next door at Pinewood, they were building Gotham City for the Batman movie that was about to shoot there, which was I've forgotten the director's name. Anyway, it was incredible. This was like half a mile long set of Gotham City, and we
Wow.
stood at the end, and it was just these amazing buildings. I've never seen anything like that kind of scale before. So yeah, it was very exciting. The main kind of Midian set was probably about 6 stories high, with all these rope bridges going over at different levels, and it was this big round kind of cave thing. Um, and my character, for me, it was a kind of great relief because my character didn't have any makeup apart from prosthetic nipples, which I had to have because I had one scene where I had a medal ripped out I had a medal pinned through my nipple,
Mm.
and there was a scene where that got ripped out. So the whole film I had to have prosthetic nipples just because of that scene. And but it was lovely, kind of turning up at a reasonable time and eating breakfast and seeing all the poor bastards who've been there since 5:30, kind of sitting through makeup and
Right.
and just chatting to other actors and talking to Clive and chatting through the performance, and it was really exciting. It was a really exciting film to do. Sadly, it never kind of made. the impact that everybody was expecting, and that was mainly due to one tiny little thing that happened. They halfway through filming, it was um, the production company um, decided that they were going to change. They were going to move our executive producer and put him onto a different project and give us another executive producer. And this new guy that came in didn't understand Clive's concept, which was basically that the monsters were the goodies and the humans were the baddies.
Hmm.
And it was about how good the monsters are, and and he said, no, you can't have that, because this is a Clive Barker slasher film, which it kind of wasn't. All of Clive's films actually are kind of love stories at their heart, which is kind of bizarre when you think about Hellraiser. But then if you look at it more, it is a love story. That's basically what it's. How far would you go for the man you love?
Yeah.
Would you kill a load of people?
Right.
Um, so so there was a lot of friction going on at that level, and he wanted changes to be made. He eventually ended up getting rid of Clive's editor, who he'd worked with on both the Hellraiser films, and bringing in his own editor. Um, and and it kind of messed the whole dynamic of the film. The whole reason for the film was really messed up. So the film that was finally released um, wasn't the film that we all thought we were making. Um, and because of that, it didn't really work the way it was supposed to.
Hmm.
Since then, 25 years later, and they managed to find all the original footage, and Clive managed to put together his version of what he was expecting Nightbreed to be. And we actually went over to LA for the premiere of that, and there was this amazing poster saying Nightbreed, a love story 25 years in the making, because that's how long it took to finally get released.
Oh, that's
But
great.
yeah,
Wow.
it was
So
exciting. It was exciting.
yeah, and having that
Go on.
opportunity to go to the premiere and be a part of that, that's obviously a special occasion. Have you had other occasions like that for some of your other films where you were a part of the big premiere? Any memories?
No, the premiere for Nightbreed actually was probably the biggest one for us for the original premiere in 1990 in London was at the Odeon in Leicester Square, which is probably one of the biggest cinemas in London. And I remember they had a big party at a place called Tower Records. That was this huge party, and they had cocktails with lychees in the bottom painted like eyeballs.
Oh,
And I had way too many. Like I was like 27 then. I had way too many of these cocktails before I went to see the film. And then we rolled up to the cinema, and there was all our pictures outside. It was very exciting. And but then when we got to see the film, because I hadn't seen it until then, I was a wee bit disappointed that it didn't kind of the
hmm.
success wasn't there. Since then, no, I haven't really been invited to. Have I been invited to any premieres? No, they just seem, since then the films just seem to open, and of course streaming changes everything because stuff comes out on streaming. So the
Absolutely.
biggest excitement now is usually the rap parties. Well, I've been to a few wild rap parties since then,
Yeah.
which have
Oh,
which
yeah.
have been which have been fun.
Wow. So, what would you say, within the industry, your experiences, what has the greatest challenge been for you thus far?
Oh, for me, the challenge I find acting in film challenging every time I start a new project, because I think as an actor, every time you do something, it's completely different. So just when I think I've mastered what I need to do, you start on a new project, and the style of the project is completely different. The script's completely different. The character's completely different. I actually really love to play very, very diverse characters. So I'm not one of these actors that play a version of myself. I like to be completely different in everything that I do, which has been fun, but is an extra challenge on getting everything together. And with film, especially because you're dialing everything back to kind of internalizing a lot more. I've never feel that I've completely mastered the craft. Every time feels like going back to stage one and starting all over again.
Right.
Um, it's nice when you get, so I've just the film I've been doing in Hungary is a sequel. So that's slightly different because you've at least worked with those people to, you know, the style of the film because you've done the first film. You know the character because you've done the first film. So it kind of makes it slightly easier. Um just been finished watching Stranger Things,
Oh
um,
yes.
which I'm going to see tomorrow in the West End. There's a West End version of it on stage, which is the prequel to the series. And it was interesting watching the documentary about the making of that, and how the cast are so confident because they've been doing it, you know, for like 9 years. So they all know who they are. They know the crew. Everybody knows each other. They know how they work. Once you get to that stage, it's so much easier. But when you're going in blind and you don't know anybody and you're just hoping, and one of the things I find when you work in theatre, you get 2 or 3 weeks or longer to work through, to rehearse, to kind of make all your mistakes without anybody seeing apart from the people you're working with. Um, but on a film, you don't usually get that luxury. You get sent the script, you learn the script, you turn up on the first day shoot, and then you perform it, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And you're hoping the other actors you're with are kind of performing it at the same kind of level as you're going to be, and the same kind of style. And so that whole first day is always very much a learning curve. Uh,
And on the flip side of that, what would you say has been the most rewarding for you within the industry?
So again, going back to the kind of playing these diverse characters, the most rewarding project I did was a TV series that was on Amazon Prime called Dark Ditties Presents. And on that series, I was in every episode, but I got to play a completely different character. And the first character I played an investment banker who was very unpleasant, as you might expect, slightly stereotypical. But on the second one episode, I got to play an 85-year-old woman called Mrs. Wiltshire, who
Oh,
did a lot of the film just talking to camera. And they made a prosthetic face for me, which is sitting up. I'm looking at her now. So that was a real challenge, but I really managed to get inside her head, I think. And I was really, of all the things that I've done, that's the one I'm proudest of because it was so difficult to do and it really worked. And to a point where when we wrapped her character on that film, it was like she died, and everybody was really upset that this lovely, dear little sweet-year-old woman had just kind of gone and was never going to come back. It
yeah.
was bizarre,
Right.
bizarre.
Now, these costumes, these amazing costumes that you have, within the industry, of course, obviously, Hellraiser being so intense looking and special, were they preserved? Did they think to preserve them back then, or did they just kind of discard them after the filming?
So, Image Animation had studios in London and in Los Angeles when they were going. They no longer exist, but they did have the original characters and the original costumes and heads and things um, on display in their receptions for a while. I know that. Since then, some super collectors have bought them, and I have seen the Hellraiser heads, the Butterball heads, that somebody brought to one of the conventions,
Wow.
and I was kind of strangely chilling to see them again because it was it was quite like sensory deprivation was quite hard to go through, and it kind of brought back all of those kind of feelings of how tough it was to film.
Yeah.
Um, and I sold, so when during the pandemic, I went through my loft and cleared off on my attic, and there was all this Hellraiser and Nightbreed stuff just sitting there gathering dust. So I decided I would sell everything I got on prop at the prop store, which in LA.
Yes.
So they auctioned it all off. So, but there was tons of stuff there. I had my original script, including so before each take they would dip our fingers in blood, so that we had bloody fingers, and so the script, because I opened the script, had blood stains on the script from
Oh,
it.
wow.
So, and it had the original kind of photographs they did for test photos and continuity shots and stuff. So there was a lot of stuff there. Yeah, but they,
Speaking,
to be fair, the the Hellraiser stuff, the masks were all made out of foam latex, and it doesn't stand the test of time. It deteriorates over time, so they're very, very, very fragile. These days, the stuff I've got from Mrs. Wiltshire, that's made out of silicone, so it's much longer lasting.
hmm,
Um, and much more comfortable to wear, I have to say as well. And oddly, feels like real skin. It's
yeah,
kind of weird when you touch it. It's like, okay, this feels like
yeah.
real skin.
Better than fiberglass, I'm sure, or whatever the other one was you said.
Yeah, fiberglass was on the body. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I had fiberglass in Nightbreed as well. I had chicken skulls. I had a necklace of chicken skulls, and they were all made out of fiberglass, and they weren't lined. So the kind of rough fiberglass was all like around my neck. So
Oh,
the end of each day's shoot, it kind of irritates if you have fiberglass next to your skin too much, and it did.
wow.
Yeah.
And what was your experience like in 2016 on Starfish?
Starfish was fascinating. Was the really so the guy who cast that, he cast all the Lord of the Rings films.
Hmm.
He's a really big casting director here in the UK. So I was surprised to get the casting for that, and I went in and they sent me the script, and the character was originally, they wanted me to do it in South African accent because Starfish was based on a true story, and the doctor in the hospital that they wanted me to play was a real person, and he was South African. So I kind of worked on it in a South African accent, but I'm really bad at accents, like really bad at accents. And when I got there at the casting, the John Hubbard, the casting director, said, "Actually, we're not going down there. So if you want to not do the accent, that's fine." I went, "Oh, thank God for that! Yeah, that was fantastic." So anyway, I did the casting and I got the job, and my scenes were with the wonderful Joanne Froggatt, who's gone on to win Golden Globes. She's a fantastic actress. She was in Downton Abbey, and she's
Oh, yeah.
since then she's done loads and loads and loads of stuff. But and she was amazing to work with. I had a lovely scene with her where I had to tell her that her husband, we needed to cut off his limbs. Sorry, this is real spoiler, but we had to like we were going to cut off his arms and his legs and part of his face, and she was playing his wife, and this had all happened. He gets sepsis basically, and this had all happened to this poor guy in the space of like 24, 48 hours. She's pregnant with their second child. Their perfect life just falls apart within 48 hours. And with 48 hours later, he's in a coma, and she's being told by my character that we're going to remove his arms and his limbs and part of his face, and he's only got a 10% chance of survival.
Oh
I
my God.
was like, and she played the scene. I mean, it was so moving the way she was playing it. It was gut wrenching from my side to actually be giving her this news. So I learned a lot from working with her, and we shot all that in an air force base, which isn't far from here, which was done to do all the hospital scenes. But it was a great film, and the family that this happened to, they were all on set. So
Oh, okay.
it was
Wow.
really, really interesting talking to them and getting their perspective. But it's a good film. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's very, very moving.
I haven't seen it
Um,
yet. I did see the preview and I was very intrigued. I'd like to see it.
yeah, but it is a true story, and it was very true to life. Everything that happens in the film
Mm.
happened. It's good in the end. It has a kind of uplifting ending, but to get there, yeah, you'll
It's a roller
you'll
coaster,
you'll
I'll
you'll
bet.
need a yeah.
So that very same year, 2016, you were part of the story of Fright Night. You're So Cool, Brewster. What can you tell us about that?
So I'd done a documentary about this company called uh, Dead Mouse Productions, had asked the cast of Hellraiser if they could film us and interview us for a documentary they were making about Hellraiser. It ended up being called Leviathan. It was 7 hours long, this documentary,
Oh,
so they
wow.
had so much footage. But I got on really well with them. And the following year, they rang me up and said, "We're going to do the next documentary we're going to do is about Fright Night. And we've got this idea that Roddy McDowall, as Peter Vincent, does all the links in the documentary. But sadly, Roddy is no longer with us. He passed away. So we found somebody who's got Roddy McDowall's life mask. So we're going to make a Roddy McDowall face, and we're trying to think of somebody who looks a little bit like Roddy McDowall. And we thought of you. Do you think you could play Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent and do all the links? So yeah, that would be cool. So they offered me the job, and within they said, "Do you mind if we announce it on social media?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be fine." And within like an hour of me saying yes to it, there were all these posts popping up on Facebook and Instagram and everything else saying, "Who does he think he is playing Roddy McDowall? Roddy McDowall was so good. Who does will be interested to see if he can do this? And I'm sure he's going to screw this up." And it's like, oh shit, what have I said yes to? But yeah, it was great fun to do. Huge long monologues of links that they wanted me to learn. It was quite hard actually, because as an actor, you kind of connect to the emotional, or I connect to the emotional side of what my character is saying, and that's how I kind of remember it. But
Hmm.
when you're doing a documentary, um, it's basically lists of people's names and dates and things that have happened, so it's much more factual, obviously, because it's a documentary. But I had a lot of fun playing around with it, and I got some Martin Sheen, who's played lots of real life people. I kind of he gave me some advice on Twitter about playing real life people, and kind of doing as much research as you possibly can about the person, and then forgetting it all and just hoping that you've taken that on board and then just going along with it. Otherwise, you get kind of stuck. So yeah, we had a lot of fun, and I did a lot of ad libbing as well, trying to kind of um, it was interesting because I wasn't really playing Roddy McDowall, and I wasn't playing. So in Fright Night, you got Peter Vincent, the real person, but I wasn't playing him either. I was playing Peter Vincent, the real person who has a TV persona
Yeah.
where because he's as Peter Vincent, he presents this TV show. And so I wasn't playing Roddy McDowall, and I wasn't playing the real Peter Vincent. I was playing Peter Vincent in his TV persona.
Right.
So it was kind of complicated to get my
Kind of
head
another
round.
dimension of him. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, it was fun. It was fun, and thankfully, recently, I met it's the director of Fright Night. I can't remember
Mm.
his name. Shit, that's the thing of being 65. He's amazing, and he put a really lovely thing up on social media saying that I made a great Peter Vincent, and he thought I
Oh,
did a really
wonderful.
really good job. So I was yeah. He shares his name with the guy who plays Spider-Man, the young English actor.
Oh,
Yo, you're no help, Joseph. You're no
no,
help
I'm
whatsoever.
I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Yes. Oh my goodness. I can't remember offhand. I really don't. But
Meaning, I'm really bad at this. Usually, I have a list of people's names and things sitting like here off camera, so I can kind of refer to it because
just
I'm
in
really
case.
rubbish at names. Yeah.
So, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you've received within your career thus far?
Um, keep going. Um, keep trying. Um, I don't know. Best piece of advice. That's a very good question. Uh, be as truthful. Find the truth. I think that's the best piece of advice. Find the truth in whatever you're doing. If what you're doing is rooted in truth as an actor, then you're always going to be able to go back to that if you find yourself stuck, and it's always going to kind of give the more truthful the performance, the more reality. And I think that is more so the way the more that filming stuff progresses, because audiences are increasingly savvy, and the tiniest little gesture or thought they'll pick up on. These days, you can't do these big performances because people expect absolute reality on from their characters, and young actors are really good at that. But I came from, I come from a different generation. We were hammy, and
Right.
I know. Interesting. When I was studying Roddy McDowell, one of the things he always said to on his first day of shoot to the director was, "Tell me if I'm doing too much because I have a habit of doing too much." Because I don't know, it's easy to do, especially on film. But yeah, root it in truth. Find the truth, and it'll help.
And I'm sure it changes from film to film, but do you have a certain technique when it comes to getting into character and really becoming that character? Is there something that you kind of bring to the table for each film, regularly, that you kind of bring it to life?
I usually try and have a little catchphrase or like a couple of lines, which for me, usually from the character that will me encapsulates who that character is. And um, again, I have a little crib board just to remind myself to work on my diction to make sure everything that I say is very clear. Um, but at the same time trying to keep that. See, I'm working on my diction now that I'm mentioning it because I'm aware of it, but I know it can make a big difference, and especially in the first scenes it's quite interesting. The first scene that your character is appears on the screen, if you can be very clear in what you're saying, it makes it easier for the audience to just relax with you,
Right.
and they're not kind of going, what's that? They kind of can relax and sit back, and then they accept your character much faster. um, and interestingly enough, you can do that. It's like for Mrs. Wiltshire, she had an accent, but she was very clipped in what she said, and she really pronounced her consonants. And it just even within a character, you can actually you can find clarity. So I was try and remember that, but usually there's a couple of phrases that will help me to kind of get into character. And I have a long list of notes that I kind of look at, um, trying to remind myself, but usually way too much. And I think a lot of actors do that. You do all your research, and there's so much stuff that you have to just trust the process, trust that you've done the research, it is in here, and it will come out. Because that's all you can do. You can't go into a performance thinking, now what about this? And if I did this, and what does this character really think of this? It just won't work. You have to be in the moment for that person. So
And all
yeah,
these
you have to
great
trust
different
that you've
roles
done
you've
enough.
been a part of, are they? It, I dare say, is there a favorite that comes to mind? That you've portrayed over the years.
Yeah, it would be Mrs. Wiltshire. It would be Mrs. Wiltshire. I'll take you over and show you if you want. She's sitting up here. I'm just going to
Absolutely.
move you over. So, so there you go.
Oh wow! Look at that. Wow, that's
Yeah,
great.
so I can't get camera high enough, but yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah, she would
fantastic.
be my favorite.
Wow. So another one. Let's talk about before we get into the end here. Some of the things you've been a part of, television, obviously, you've been a part of film. Are there any differences in your opinion between the two? Is one easier to film than the other, or is it just a different experience altogether? What's your take on that?
There's more time on film to get everything right. That can be good and bad. More time means that they'll spend more time, so you quite often spend more time sitting around waiting. Hurry up and wait. Um, TV, there's usually more time to do more shots, which again can be a plus and a minus because you do a shot too many times and it loses its freshness, its uniqueness. Um, that would be another thing with advice, actually. If you've got something with a big emotional scene, um, try and not release all those emotions until it comes to your close-ups, because there's only so many times you can actually physically, as a human being, be that emotional. And if you do it all when the focus is on somebody else, then you're wasting those few precious times. I reckon I can cry 4 or 5 times, but after that, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So you wait until the close-ups on you. So I find that quite interesting. Theatre, I've done a lot of theatre as well, and I've done more theatre than anything else, and that again is a double-edged sword, because obviously you adapt theatre depending on the size of the auditorium you're playing. But if you, I played a few like 3,000 seaters, so you have to do quite big performances, and you get used to that. And I did a lot of that when I was in my first kind of 20 years, and then when you go from that to doing film or telly, and you're having to like pull it back and pull it back and pull it back. Uh, it's interesting getting the fine balance of pulling back enough and also knowing where the camera is. If it's a real close up, you can really just think the lines, because it will come across in your face. But if the camera's if you know where the camera is and you know what the lens is doing, then you know how big to judge the performance can be.
And
Um,
how can fans follow you as far as keeping track of what you got coming up and all that you've accomplished? Do you have a website?
I don't. Yeah, I used to have a website. I'm kind of winding down now that I'm in my mid 60s. But I have a Facebook page, so you can look me up on there. Just Simon Bamford Facebook, you'll see it. And I have an Insta account. Um, I think they're the only two I've got. I've been kind of dialing down my social media too. So
Hmm.
yeah, those would be the two places you could find me.
Excellent. And fast forward years from now, looking back at your career as a whole, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
A monster, just monstrous, totally monstrous. He had a monstrous life.
It sure was, and it's been amazing. I mean, all that you've accomplished. I want to first and foremost thank you for all of your contributions to obviously theater, television, and film, but especially horror. And you've really been a big part of the industry. So I want to thank you for that.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks for including me and inviting me on here. It's a privilege.
Absolutely. Celebrating Sci Fi Week, Volume 2. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Appreciate you taking the time. For Simon Bamford, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you, the fans, and what you thought of this interview. And we will see you all next time.